Hope Bridge Orphanage sat on the quiet edge of town, where the streets thinned into tall grass and abandoned rail tracks. In the late afternoons, the place always looked gentler than it truly was. Its cracked walls softened by a wash of gold light, its old swings creaking in the warm breeze, like they were humming lullabies to children who never had anyone to sing to them. Liam Carter had grown up in that light. 15 years old, pale-skinned, slim, with eyes the color of a fading summer sky. There was always something fragile in the way he carried himself, like someone who had been careful for too long, afraid the world might break if he touched it too firmly. He had been left at the orphanage gate when he was barely a toddler. No blanket, no note. Just a name someone had scribbled on a tag tied to his wrist. Yet somehow Liam wasn't angry. He had every reason to be. Other children had come and gone, chosen by smiling couples who wanted a son or daughter to call their own. But Liam had stayed behind year after year, watching hope drip slower each time, like water leaking from a cracked tap. And still a part of him refused to harden. His heart, for all its scars, remained soft. He still believed, quietly, stubbornly, that maybe one day someone would speak his name like it belonged to them. That softness was what drew Zara Monroe toward him. Zara was 13, small and wiry, with deep brown skin and eyes that always seemed to be carrying a storm. Not anger, sadness, the kind that makes people hesitate before stepping closer. She didn't talk much. Instead, she painted. Lines and colors poured out of her, like another language, one she trusted more than words. She often sat in the back corner of the courtyard, leaning over her little sketchbook with a concentration so fierce it made the world around her fade. Most kids thought she was strange. Liam thought she was brilliant. Their friendship didn't need permission. It simply happened. Liam would sit beside her, quietly drawing shapes in the dirt while she worked, or telling her random facts about constellations and faraway places he dreamed of visiting. She would hum in response, or sometimes smile, small, shy things that felt like gifts. In a world where love was rationed and comfort was an accident, they found in each other something steady, a gravity. The late summer evening the news arrived began like any other. The younger kids were chasing each other near the fence. Zara was sketching a stray cat, asleep under the steps. Liam was stretched out on the grass, eyes closed, pretending he was somewhere else. Then, Mrs. Lorne Stern, silver-haired, with that uncanny ability to hush a room, simply by walking into it, stepped out of the office and called Liam's name. He sat up, surprised. He hadn't done anything wrong today, at least not that he remembered. Zara looked up from her sketchbook, her expression tense. She didn't like when Liam was called in unexpectedly. Something about it always made her uneasy, as if any small thing could become a reason to take him away. He shrugged at her, trying to reassure her with a faint smile. "I'll be back," he mouthed. But he wasn't sure. Inside, the air felt colder. Mrs. Lorne gestured for Liam to sit across from her. The office smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. "There's news," she began carefully, her hands laced on the desk. "The Sterlings contacted us this morning." Liam blinked. The name meant nothing to him. "You might not know them," she continued, "but they're one of the wealthiest families in the state. They've been hoping to adopt for years." He swallowed. His heart had begun to thud in an uneven rhythm. "They selected you," Mrs. Lorne said softly. For a breathless moment, Liam didn't understand. Selected. As if he were an item, a choice. Then reality hit him like a blow. "Me." His voice cracked on the single syllable. Mrs. Lorne nodded. "They read your file. They want to meet you. And if all goes well, you'll be leaving the orphanage this week." The room suddenly felt too small, the walls too close, his pulse too loud. A family. A real family. Something he'd imagined so many times that it felt like a fairy tale someone had told him once and then snatched away. He should have been ecstatic. He should have been laughing, crying, shaking with joy. Instead, a cold panic spread through his chest. Zara. He saw her in his mind, hunched over her sketchbook, trying to keep her world together with charcoal lines and fragile hope. Zara, who sat beside him every day. Zara, who didn't have anyone else. Zara, who looked at him like he was the only person who ever really saw her. He couldn't say it. Mrs. Lorne tilted her head. Liam, you deserve this. Don't deny yourself a family out of fear. But it wasn't fear for himself. He managed to nod barely. Can I tell Zara? Mrs. Lorne smiled gently. Of course. Zara was still outside when he emerged, but her sketchbook lay closed on her lap. She was staring at the ground, knees hugged to her chest, waiting for him in that silent, tense way she had when she sensed something was wrong. Liam approached slowly, his steps disturbingly loud on the gravel. She looked up. The pain hit her instantly sharp enough that she didn't need him to say a word. Something in the way he carried his shoulders told her everything he was leaving. People always left. Her eyes glistened, but her expression didn't change. When she whispered, "This week," Liam answered, his voice barely a rasp. Zara's throat worked as she tried to swallow the hurt. She pushed her sketchbook aside and stood up so quickly the bench scraped the ground. Congratulations. The word trembled, almost broke. You finally get what you wanted. He hated how it sounded cold, distant, like she was pushing him away before he could drift any farther. Zara, I don't want to go without. You have to, she cut in. They chose you. The sky above them shifted from gold to a bruised purple, as if even the day was grieving. I didn't ask for this, Liam said. I didn't even... But you want a family. Her voice cracked. And I'm not one. He closed the distance between them in 2 steps, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. You are, he said fiercely. You are, to me. Her eyes widened. For the first time since he'd known her, they showed something unguarded fear. Real fear. Fear of losing the one person she dared to need. The wind picked up, rustling the old trees that bordered the yard. A storm was forming somewhere far away, thunder rumbling like a warning. I can't lose you too, she whispered. Liam pulled her into his arms. You won't, he said against her hair. I'll come back for you. I promise, Zara. I will find you when I'm old enough, when I have the power to choose. She pressed her forehead against his chest, breathing in the scent of dust and faint laundry soap, and the boy who had been her whole world without ever knowing it. People break promises, she murmured. I won't. You might forget. I couldn't even if I tried. The storm rolled closer, as if echoing something heavy between them. But the world wasn't done with the night yet, because at that moment, the main gates creaked open, rusty metal whining, as a sleek black car pulled into the courtyard. The Sterlings had arrived earlier than expected. Too early. Liam stiffened. Zara's grip tightened on his shirt. From the car stepped a tall man in an immaculate suit, and a woman with diamond earrings catching the dying light. Their faces were warm, smiling, hopeful, but their presence felt like a force that would swallow him whole if he let it. Mrs. Lorne hurried forward to greet them, gesturing toward Liam. There he is, she called. Zara went rigid. Liam felt her take a small step back, as if she were already bracing for the moment he'd be taken from her hands. Liam, Mrs. Sterling said gently, her smile rich with kindness. We're so happy to finally meet you. He couldn't speak. His gaze was fixed on Zara, her trembling jaw, her glassy eyes, the way her fingers curled into fists at her sides. The Sterlings approached, unaware of the quiet devastation unfolding in the space between him and the girl beside him. "Can we talk inside, sweetheart?" Mr. Sterling asked. Sweetheart. A word Zara had never once heard in her life. Liam looked at her one last time before they guided him away. And she, so small, so fierce, so heartbreakingly brave, lifted her chin and forced a single whisper past her lips, "I'll wait." He walked toward the future with strangers, but every step away from Zara felt like tearing a piece of himself loose. Behind him, her sketchbook lay open on the bench. The wind flipped through its pages wildly, page after page of charcoal drawings. All of them were of Liam. And on the last page, a new drawing had begun, unfinished. Two figures reaching for each other across a widening distance. A storm finally broke above the orphanage, rain pounding the earth, as if the sky itself understood. Some promises are made in sunlight, but the ones whispered in heartbreak, those are the ones that never fade. The Sterling estate overlooked the ocean like it had been carved out of a dream. Marble floors, sunlit rooms, the soft rustle of curtains in a home where silence had never sounded hostile. Liam Carter entered that world at 15, wide-eyed, overwhelmed, and painfully aware that he was stepping into a life he had never imagined belonged to someone like him. But the Sterlings welcomed him with unreserved warmth. They weren't perfect, but they loved without calculation, and they spoke to him the way people did when they believed in a future worth handing someone. They gave him the best schools, the best mentors, a last name backed by a corporate empire, yet they never tried to mold him into someone he wasn't. They asked him what he wanted. They listened. Years passed, and Liam grew into someone even he barely recognized. Tall, sharp-featured, confident, in ways he hadn't known a person could be. His mind became his greatest weapon, precise, strategic, hungry to build something meaningful. By 28, his face was on magazine covers. By 30, he was the rising star of the Sterling global dynasty, the kind of man people quoted in boardrooms. But the world saw only his brilliance. They didn't see the empty spaces he carried inside. They didn't see the girl who filled them. Love stories often began with electric moments, stolen glances, whispered promises. Liam's began with a charcoal-smudged girl in an orphanage courtyard, drawing worlds to survive them. And no matter how refined, polished, or powerful he became, the memory of Zara Monroe stayed untouched at the center of him. He had dated no one, refused blind setups, dodged flirtations with a polite smile. People speculated he was either impossibly selective or consumed with work, but the truth was simpler and far more fragile. His heart had been claimed before he ever understood what that meant. From the age of 18, with access to resources he never had as a child, Liam began searching for her. He didn't expect it to be difficult at first. She had been part of the system after all. Some record should have existed. A trail, a name in a database, something. But Zara had always lived like someone the world forgot to keep track of. Her files were incomplete. Transfers between shelters weren't updated. Staff changed. Locations closed. Sometimes they found a reference to a girl who matched her age. But by the time Liam's team followed up, she had been moved again without explanation. It was as if she belonged to the wind. The closer he got, the quicker the trail dissolved. Leads vanished, reports contradicted each other. And one facility insisted no girl named Zara Monroe had ever been there, despite Liam remembering the place in her stories. The system swallowed her whole, and he could only claw at the surface. Every dead end carved something hollow in him. He kept searching anyway. Years blurred into each other. University degrees, board meetings, international expansions. He made decisions affecting thousands, yet none weighed on him as heavily as the one question he carried through every room. Where are you now, Zara? He imagined her painting somewhere. He imagined her alone. He imagined her laughing with someone else and felt an unreasonable ache that made him clench his jaw at night. Sometimes in moments of exhaustion, he wondered if he had built a fantasy around her, if the Zara he remembered was frozen in time, preserved at 15, while the real Zara had long moved on. But then he'd recall the quiet defiance in her eyes, the way she didn't ask him to stay, but felt everything when he left, and he knew. You don't forget a person who taught you what belonging feels like. Weeks before his 30th birthday, Liam was in his office reviewing a major partnership proposal. His secretary Ava knocked lightly before entering a sign, "Something mattered." "Mr. Carter," she said, her tone careful. "We found her." For one terrifying second, Liam couldn't breathe. Ava continued. "Her name is still Zara Monroe. She's in Havenbrook. She runs an art center called Sunrise Art House." It felt unreal. A name he had spent half his life whispering in memory suddenly rooted itself in reality again. He gripped the edge of his desk. "Are you certain?" "Yes," Ava said gently. "There's photographic proof, public records, interviews. It's her." His pulse surged sharp and fast, like the rush of being 15 all over again, like the moment he first realized he was losing her. He didn't wait, didn't think, didn't calculate. The board meeting could wait. His birthday gala could wait. Every responsibility tethering him to the Sterling Empire snapped clean. He grabbed his keys. "I'm going to Havenbrook," he told Ava. "For how long, I don't know." He left the building before she could say anything else. The drive was long, cutting through stretches of road where the world narrowed into forests and fading sunlight. Havenbrook wasn't a city people stumbled into. It was quiet, tucked away, as if protecting its own secrets. The kind of place someone like Zara would choose out of reach, out of sight. As the miles passed, Liam found his mind replaying pieces of a life he'd tried not to romanticize. Zara's fingers smudged with charcoal. Her small smile when she caught him staring. The way she had stepped back the moment the Sterlings arrived, already bracing for the hurt she refused to show. He wondered what she looked like now. Would she still tuck her hair behind her ear when concentrating? Would her eyes still carry storms, or had the years gentled them? Would she remember him? That last question struck him like a blade. 15 years was a lifetime. She could have forgotten the promise entirely, dismissed it as childish hope, outgrown him without meaning to. But he hadn't forgotten. He had carried her through every version of himself, through every success, every failure, every lonely night staring at ceilings in hotel rooms around the world. She was the constant in a life that kept shifting beneath his feet. And now, at 30 in the prime of a career, others envied with power and wealth he hadn't sought, but had learned to wield. He had never felt less certain of anything than this moment. Dusk deepened, painting the horizon in shades of violet and ember. Liam rolled down the window, letting the wind rush in. It tasted cold, unfamiliar, like a world he was stepping into without armor. "Zara," he murmured into the night, barely conscious of speaking aloud. "This time, I won't let you slip away." But even as conviction hardened in him, a shadow of doubt rose. What if she didn't need him anymore? What if she had built a life that didn't have space for ghosts of the past? What if meeting him again brought pain instead of warmth? Love had never been part of his adult life, but longing, constant and quiet, had shaped him. Finding her felt like reclaiming something that had always been missing. But for Zara, it might feel like reopening a wound. The thought twisted in his chest. He ran a hand through his hair, the tension coiling in him tighter the closer he got to Havenbrook. Another fear surfaced, one he hadn't acknowledged. The system that had lost her so many times. Had it done more damage than he could imagine? What if she had suffered in ways he wasn't prepared to confront? What if he was no longer someone she could trust? The road curved sharply. His hands tightened on the wheel. He was no longer the boy she had known. He was the product of two worlds, one harsh, one privileged, and he wasn't sure where he fit anymore, whether he was someone who healed or shattered. But he had to see her. He had to know. By the time the first sign for Havenbrook appeared, night had fully settled. The town lights blinked ahead like scattered candles. A softness in the air hinted at a slower pace of life, one that didn't require ambition to breathe. Liam slowed the car. Somewhere in this quiet town was the girl who had shaped 15 years of his heart. Somewhere behind one of these glowing windows was Zara Monroe, the unfinished story of his past, the woman he had searched for across half a lifetime. He didn't know what he would say when he saw her. He didn't know how much of himself he would be able to hide, or whether he even wanted to. But as he crossed into Havenbrook, one thing settled in him with absolute clarity. Whatever awaited him, joy, heartbreak, forgiveness, distance, he was finally stepping toward the truth instead of chasing shadows. And for the first time in years, he felt something dangerously close to hope. Sunrise. Art House was a burst of color against the soft gray of Havenbrook's late morning sky. Sunlit windows framed rows of paint-splattered easels and paper mobiles dangling from the ceiling. Kids chased each other between tables, laughter ricocheting off the walls like bright streaks of joy. The place felt alive, warm in a way that reminded Liam of a promise he'd carried too long. He stepped inside quietly, unsure whether the pounding in his chest was excitement or something dangerously close to fear. The air smelled of acrylic paint paper and a faint echo of childhood he hadn't touched in years. Then he heard her, a woman's voice, gentle and steady, guiding a group of children mixing colors. Slowly, Nathan, don't rush it. Let the paint breathe before you add more water. Liam froze. He knew that voice. Not from memory, memory fades. He knew it from something deeper, a place that never forgot. His breath caught as he followed the sound. She stood with her back to him, hair pulled into a loose knot, paint smudged on her forearm. She was leaning over a little girl's canvas, pointing to the brushstrokes with the patience of someone who had learned tenderness through hardship. She turned, and the world stopped. Zara Monroe, older now, sculpted by time into someone stronger, someone luminous. Her features had sharpened her smile lines, faint but honest, her posture grounded. Yet her eyes, those eyes still carried that quiet, aching softness. The same stormlight, the same depth. Recognition struck her instantly. Her breath hitched, her lips parted, her hand still holding a paintbrush trembled. Liam. Hearing his name spoken that way, half disbelief, half fragile hope, made his heart lurch painfully. He stepped closer, voice low, steady despite the hurricane inside him. I came for you. The room dimmed around them. The noise softened into a distant hum. For a moment, they were two children again, standing on opposite ends of a life neither had chosen. But reality returned quickly. Zara blinked, her shock tightening into something guarded. She lowered the brush, straightened her posture, and forced a slow breath as if bracing herself. I need to finish class, she said quietly, eyes flickering away. We can talk later. Liam nodded. He understood. Time had carved distance between them, not cruelly, but enough to make her uncertain. He stepped aside, watching in silence, as she returned to the kids, her instructions soft, but her movements slightly unsteady. Every now and then, her eyes flicked toward him, quick, shy, like she was afraid of what looking too long would awaken. An hour later, the children filed out with paint-splattered clothes and wide grins. The sun dipped lower, casting warm gold across the wooden floors. Zara cleaned brushes with mechanical precision hands, betraying the nervous rhythm of someone trying to keep herself grounded. Liam approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You don't have to pretend you're not shaken," he said gently. She looked up. The years had taught her how to hide emotions, but right now she didn't. Something vulnerable flickered across her face. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "Gone in the way people disappear when they grow up. You became someone impossible to reach." Liam's chest tightened. "I searched for you," he said. "Longer than I can explain without sounding foolish." Her gaze softened, but her expression didn't fully relax. A subtle line drew across her forehead, as if something inside her resisted believing too quickly. They stepped onto the back porch, an open wooden platform, overlooking a quiet garden filled with potted flowers and wind chimes. Evening light poured over them, soft enough to make the moment feel unreal. Zara leaned against the railing, arms folded gently around herself. She wasn't pushing him away, just protecting her heart. "I used to imagine you'd forgotten me," she admitted, her voice barely above a breath. "That hope bridge was just a chapter for you, something you closed the moment life gave you something better." Liam's jaw tightened at the thought. "It wasn't better without you." A blush touched her cheeks, quick and unguarded, but she didn't look at him. Her gaze drifted across the garden, instead lingering on the wind chimes, swaying in the breeze. "I was moved a lot after you left," she said. "Different shelters, different towns. I never stayed long enough to attach to anything. I convinced myself that was safer." Liam took a slow breath, struggling to keep emotion from his voice. "I wish I'd been able to find you sooner." "You tried," she murmured. "I know you did. I read about you in the news sometimes. You looked happy. I wasn't." Zara's fingers tightened around her elbows at the quiet honesty in his tone. "I don't want to make this complicated," she said after a moment. "But the truth is, I built my life assuming you wouldn't come back. That's how I survived. And now you're standing here and part of me is terrified." Liam finished gently. Zara's eyes finally met his, raw, open. A truth she was done hiding. Yes. The breeze swept through them, lifting strands of her hair. Liam instinctively reached out, stopping himself a second before touching her. She noticed the hesitation, noticed everything, and her breath faltered. He took a small step closer. "You're not the only one who's scared," he said. "I'm afraid I'll disappoint you, that I'm not the boy you remember, that I'll cause more damage than healing." Zara blinked, startled by the admission. She had always thought he grew untouchable, protected by success, insulated by power. She never imagined he remained breakable in the quiet places. "You've changed," she whispered, "and so have you. But not in the ways that matter," he added softly. Something deep in her chest tightened, threatening to pull down walls she'd spent years building. She looked down at her hands, small, worn from paint and work, and exhaled shakily. "You say that like you're sure you want to step back into my world." "I am sure," he said, no hesitation. Zara shook her head lightly, a sad smile forming. "Liam, this place isn't the Sterling estate. It's not boardrooms or charity galas. My life is small, chaotic. Some days I barely keep things running. I'm not here for the life you have," Liam said quietly. "I'm here for you." Her breath stilled. He reached for her hand, not forcefully, but with the tender certainty of someone who had waited half a lifetime for this moment. His fingers brushed hers, hesitant, yet reverent, as if asking permission. Zara didn't pull away, but she didn't fully lean in either. "Even if I let myself believe this," she whispered, "believe you. What happens when you leave again? When your world calls you back?" "I didn't come for a visit," he said. "I came because I want to stay." Her eyes closed for a moment, like she was afraid of what hope could do to her. "You say that now. And I'll say it tomorrow," he answered. "And the day after. Don't promise things you can't keep." "I'm not promising." Liam said, his voice low, steady, impossibly sincere. "I'm choosing." Silence settled between them. Then softly, painfully, Zara pulled her hand back. Liam's chest tightened, but he didn't move. "I believe you mean it," she said. "But believing you and trusting it are two different things." "I know," he whispered, "and I don't expect trust immediately." Her gaze lifted to his quiet, searching, overflowing with things she couldn't say yet. "I've lived most of my life preparing for people to leave," she said. "It's the only way I knew how to survive. And having you here now, it feels like the ground under me is shifting." Liam stepped closer, slow enough for her to stop him if she wanted. She didn't. "You don't have to fall," he murmured. "Just let me stand beside you." Her breath trembled. A long moment passed, wind chimes, whispering evening light, fading two hearts, remembering how to find each other across time. And for the first time since he'd walked into Sunrise Art House, something in Zara's eyes warmed. Not completely. Not enough to erase the years of fear, but enough to let possibility in. "You're making it very hard to keep my guard up," she whispered. "That's the idea." A tiny laugh escaped her soft, surprised Precious. Liam felt it echo through him like a spark. She looked at him fully now, without hiding. "I don't know where this will lead," she said. "Neither do I," he replied. "But I know where I want it to go." Her heartbeat skipped, visible in her throat. "And what if I'm not what you remember?" she asked quietly. "What if I'm harder now? Or messier? Or carrying more scars than you expect?" Liam reached out, brushing a single paint smudge from her cheek with a touch so gentle it nearly undone her. "Then I'll learn you all over again," he said. "Every version." Zara exhaled shakily. A surrender not to him, but to the truth she could no longer deny. His presence warmed the loneliest corners of her heart, corners she thought were frozen forever. She didn't move into his arms. She didn't close the distance. But she didn't step away either. For now that was enough. The chimes sang softly above them, as the sun dipped below the horizon. Two silhouettes standing in the amber light, reunited by a promise that had survived the years, the distance, and all the broken places in between. And somewhere deep inside her chest, beneath the caution and the fear, a fragile seed of hope began to bloom again. The weeks that followed their reunion unfolded with a gentleness neither of them expected. Havenbrook, with its slow mornings and sleepy streets, seemed to breathe easier whenever Liam appeared at Sunrise Art House. He became as much a part of the center as the paint-stained floors and sunlit windows. Every day, like clockwork, he arrived with rolled-up sleeves and an easy smile, the kind that warmed the cold corners in Zara's chest. He fixed the wobbly bookshelves that had survived too many years of children treating them like jungle gyms. He rebuilt a corner of the playroom into a tiny robot lab after noticing one of the boys duct-taping batteries to toy cars. He organized supplies, carried heavy donation boxes effortlessly, and most endearing to Zara, washed paintbrushes when her chemical allergy flared. Kids adored him instantly. They clung to his arms, begged him to read stories, challenged him to paint battles that he always lost on purpose. Zara watched him in quiet awe each day, discovering new pieces of the boy she had known and the man he had become. And every night, when they locked up the center together, she felt an ache she didn't have words for, a sweetness tinged with fear. But fear had always lived in Zara. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the quiet kind that settled in her bones after years of instability. She tried to ignore it. tried to let herself enjoy the warmth blooming each time Liam looked at her as if she mattered. But the warmth made her feel vulnerable, and vulnerability to her had always been the first warning before loss. One evening after the children left, and the sky outside shifted to dusky lavender, she asked Liam to stay behind for a talk. He heard something in her voice, something fragile, and followed her to the empty art room. Zara leaned against a table, fingers curled around the edge as if anchoring herself. "I've been thinking," she began softly, eyes lowered. "About us." Liam's expression gentled. "Tell me." Her throat tightened. She forced the words out slowly, afraid they might shatter if she rushed. "Your world and mine, they're not the same." He stepped closer, but she lifted a hand asking silently for space. "You grew up to become someone powerful," she continued. "Someone people look up to. Someone who has options, opportunities, a future mapped out." Her breath trembled. "And I'm still just me. A girl who grew up being moved from place to place. No family, no wealth, no safety net. Nothing that makes sense alongside someone like you." She finally met his eyes. "I'm afraid there's no space for me in the life you already have." The admission came out raw, unpolished, peeled straight from the parts of her she never let anyone see. Liam's chest clenched, not with frustration, but with the heavy understanding of just how deeply her past still shadowed her. "You're not a mismatch to my world," he said quietly. "You're the part I've been missing." But she shook her head, turning away. "I'm scared, Liam. Every time someone got close, they left. And I learned to stop reaching for things I couldn't keep." Her voice dropped to a whisper that tore something inside him. "I can't go through that again. Not with you." The room held its breath. Liam closed the distance between them carefully, like approaching a frightened bird. He didn't touch her, yet he simply stood near enough for her to feel his presence, near enough to reassure without pressure. "You won't lose me," he said softly. "Not now. Not ever." But Zara's shoulders curled inward. Affection made her fragile, and fragility terrified her. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "God, I want to. But believing isn't the same as trusting that you'll stay." Silence stretched heavy, but honest. Then Liam placed a hand over his chest. Not dramatic, not performative, just true. "I'll show you," he said, not with words, with actions. She didn't answer, but her eyes glistened, not with doubt, but with the painful hope she was afraid to hold. A few days later, reality intruded on their fragile peace. A call from Sterling Global. A crisis on the board. Liam's temporary absence from the corporate world had been tolerated, admired even by some who saw it as a sign of maturity. But business didn't pause simply because he had found a piece of his past. He had to return. Not forever. Just for a few days. He told Zara the evening before he left. They stood outside Sunrise Art House as the last of the sunset bled across the sky. A gentle wind tugged at her hair, scattering a few strands across her face. "I need to go back for a little while," he explained. "There's a situation I have to handle personally, but I'll be back as soon as I can." She nodded slowly, her expression calm on the surface. Too calm. "I understand," she said. "Work comes first." "That's not why I'm going," Liam said gently. "This is temporary." "It's fine," she insisted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Really, but the hollowness in her voice told him otherwise. He reached out, brushing her cheek with his thumb, as if trying to erase the fear he felt thrumming beneath her skin. "Zara," he murmured, "this doesn't change anything." She looked away, unable to meet his certainty. "I know," she whispered. She didn't. That night, after Liam drove away, Havenbrook felt colder. Zara walked home in the quiet, hugging her coat around herself. The streetlights flickered as she passed the world suddenly too big, too empty. The warmth of the last few weeks tugged at her ribs like a phantom. She tried to tell herself she was being irrational. He said he'd come back. He meant it. He had never lied to her. But fear wasn't rational. Fear had memory. And Zara's fear remembered everything. It remembered the day Liam left Hopebridge swallowed by luxury cars and wealthy strangers. It remembered every social worker who forgot her name, every family who almost chose her, but didn't. Every time she built a connection only for it to dissolve without warning. The human heart. Her heart had grown around abandonment scars. She arrived at her small apartment, stared at the darkened living room, and sank onto the couch, exhaling a tremor she couldn't hide from herself. "He'll come back," she whispered, trying to make the words sound real. But something inside her recoiled, because loving Liam meant risking everything she'd built to protect herself. What if this time went like all the others? What if the world he belonged to decided she didn't fit? What if she became a temporary warmth again, something he'd look back on with fondness once life carried him forward? Her chest constricted. She hated this part of herself, the part that expected loss even in joy, that flinched from hope like it might explode. But she wasn't wrong to be afraid, because this time her fear wasn't unfounded. 3 days after Liam left, the uncertainty she felt began twisting into something sharper. He called when he could, late-night whispers from hotel rooms, brief updates squeezed between meetings. But the corporate crisis deepened, pulling him further into the world she had always feared would reclaim him. One night, after finishing class, she stepped into the office to check messages and froze. Her center's voicemail light was blinking. She pressed play, and Liam's assistant Ava spoke in a polished, clipped tone. "Miss Monroe, I'm reaching out regarding Mr. Carter. There have been complications with his immediate schedule. He'll be unavailable for contact until further notice. We'll update you as soon as circumstances stabilize." Zara's blood chilled. Unavailable. Until further notice. Like a door closing. Something inside her began to crumble, the careful trust she'd been building, the fragile hope she'd allowed herself, the warmth she had barely learned to hold. She steadied herself against the desk, breath shallow. "He said he'd be back," she whispered. But the room stayed silent. Sunrise Art House, once filled with light, felt suddenly dim. Zara sank into the chair, fingers trembling. Her fear, her oldest, cruelest companion, rose in her chest with merciless clarity. "This is it," it whispered. "You let yourself hope. And now he's gone." And for the first time since Liam had returned to her life, Zara felt something sharp, bitter, and unbearably familiar. The beginning of losing him. Aurelia Sterling. Global's gleaming headquarters was a skyscraper of glass and expectation. From the moment Liam stepped out of the elevator, he felt the ground shifting beneath him. Executives hovered with urgent updates. Legal teams waited outside his door, and the board demanded explanations he wasn't yet ready to give. He had come back to resolve a crisis, but the situation devoured him whole. One emergency meeting bled into another. One negotiation triggered 3 more. One late-night briefing morphed into dawn creeping through blinds he barely remembered closing. He texted Zara every day. He never missed a day. But the messages grew shorter, typed in stolen seconds, half-finished thoughts, sent between decisions that could uproot the company's future. "How are the kids? I'll be home soon. I miss Havenbrook. I miss you." Zara always responded gently, never demanding more from him, never asking when he'd return. But beneath her quiet replies, Liam sensed something fraying, something tenuous. He promised himself it would only be a few more days. Just a few more days. But Aurelia was a vortex. And the harder he fought to stay connected to Zara, the more the corporate world tightened its grip. The rumor appeared on a late Tuesday afternoon, dropped into the media like a spark in dry grass. Liam Carter spotted with sterling FutureTech's rising star, Eva Moretti. The headline blazed across business blogs and celebrity sites. The accompanying photo captured Liam and Eva standing close outside Aurelia, mid-conversation. She was laughing at something he'd said, sunlight glinting off her sleek copper hair. Liam was looking down, brows furrowed in concentration, the expression he wore when discussing strategy. It was harmless, out of context. But the internet never cared for context. Within hours, the rumor had grown wings. The golden duo, the power pair of Sterling Global, FutureTech's heiress, and the Carter prodigy. Liam didn't see any of it, not immediately. He was deep in a budget review, his phone silenced somewhere under a pile of reports. Zara, on the other hand, saw it all. She was at Sunrise Art House sorting through donations with the radio murmuring in the background. A volunteer had placed a gossip magazine on the counter for recycling, and the glossy cover caught her attention by accident. Her breath stopped. There he was, Liam, standing close to another woman. Eva Moretti was everything Zara wasn't: elegant, sharp, born into privilege, effortlessly belonging to Liam's world of tailored suits, marble floors, and inherited expectation. Eva fit beside him like she had always been meant to stand there. Zara's fingers shook as she picked up the magazine. Her pulse pounded in her ears. It was just a photo, just a rumor. But it pierced her more deeply than she wanted to admit. Of course, she thought bitterly. He belongs there, not here, not with me. Her vision blurred for a moment. She blinked hard, forcing herself to breathe. She waited for him to call for his voice to make sense of the panic rising in her chest. Hours passed. Afternoon dissolved into evening, and still nothing. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he hadn't seen the news. Maybe he was already explaining the misunderstanding to Eva, not her. A wound she thought she had buried reopened with brutal precision. She whispered into the empty room, "He'll explain. He will." But the words were more prayer than certainty. When her phone finally vibrated, she answered too quickly, the edge of fear still clinging to her breath. Liam's voice came through a bit strained, as though he'd been running. "Zara, I'm sorry. I've been in meetings all day. How was—" She cut him off, unable to hold the storm any longer. "You look good with her." Liam stilled. "What?" "That woman, Eva." Her voice wavered despite her effort to sound calm. "She suits you." Silence. Not empty. Waited. "Zara," Liam finally said, You don't have to explain." She swallowed, trying to soften the sting. "She's brilliant, polished, beautiful. She belongs in your world. I don't. That's not... You and I..." Zara forced the words out slowly, painfully. "I was never more than a tiny part of your life. And that's okay. It wasn't okay. Not for either of them." Liam felt something inside him rupture. "Zara, don't say that. Don't believe what you saw. This is the media twisting." But Zara, overwhelmed, frightened, drowning in insecurity, she'd carried since childhood, whispered, "I'm not enough, Liam." His heart slammed into his ribs. "No." He breathed, panic threading his voice. "Zara, listen, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, it isn't true. You matter, more than you know. Please don't do this." His desperation only made the ache sharper. She closed her eyes, letting the hurt wash over her. She wasn't angry at him. She didn't blame him. She blamed herself for believing she could fit into a life that shone so brightly it made her own look faded. "I need to protect myself," she whispered. "I can't be the one waiting for scraps of your time. I can't be a footnote in your story. You're not." But the words died as she quietly ended the call. Her hands trembled as she stared at the phone. A single second passed, then another, and with a hollow breath, she blocked his number. Not out of spite, not out of punishment, because the pain of hoping was heavier than the pain of letting go. Liam stood frozen in the middle of his office phone, still against his ear, long after the call ended. The city glittered outside the window, distant and uncaring. He tried calling back. Once, twice, 10 times. Each attempt sent him straight to voicemail. His pulse spiked with dread. He tried messaging. Every text bounced back, blocked. The realization hit him like a blow to the lungs. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. Zara, please." He grabbed his coat, ignoring Ava calling after him, ignoring the board meeting he was already late for. He didn't care. Not about Aurelia. Not about the crisis. Not about the consequences. He ran. He didn't wait for a driver, just stole the first car in the company garage and sped out of the city. His hands shook on the steering wheel, his breath ragged with fear. All he heard was her voice saying, "I'm not enough." All he felt was the terror of losing her again. This couldn't be happening. Not again. Not after 15 years. Not after he finally found her. He drove through the night headlights, cutting through the darkness, like desperation slicing through dread. When he reached Havenbrook, dawn was breaking, painting the world in muted gold. He sprinted into Sunrise Art House, only to find the lights off and a note taped to the door. Closed until further notice. His stomach dropped. He raced to her apartment. The landlord recognized him instantly and sighed when he asked about her. "She checked out last night," the man said. "Moved everything out. Didn't leave a forwarding address." Liam's knees nearly buckled. The world blurred. Air vanished. Everything inside him cracked open. "Where did she go?" he whispered. The landlord shook his head. "She didn't say." Liam stepped back, numb. Zara was gone. Gone in a way that felt terrifyingly familiar. Gone like 15 years ago, without a trace, without a goodbye, without a chance for him to fix it. His breath broke in his chest. He pressed a shaking hand to his forehead, willing himself to stay upright, to stay sane, to stay anything but the helpless boy she once knew. But all he felt was loss. Raw, immediate, devastating. Zara. Her name slipped from his lips like a prayer he didn't know how to finish. The sun rose behind him, but Liam felt like the world had gone dark. Rain hammered the city in merciless sheets the night Liam realized he had lost Zara for the second time. He had barely slept for days. His voice was rough from shouting her name through empty streets, his eyes burning from scanning every train station, every bus schedule, every quiet corner of Havenbrook. His world had shrunk to one singular truth: he needed to find her. But the world did not wait for men in love. Not even for men like him. At Aurelia, the board had grown restless. Liam's sudden disappearance from the corporate crisis, his refusal to prioritize meetings over searching for Zara, and the circulating rumors all converged into a single accusation: irresponsibility. The board summoned him back. He arrived drenched, desperate, barely present. Harold Sterling, the chairman, and the closest thing Liam had to a father, watched him with a tired, troubled gaze. "We must temporarily suspend your executive authority," Harold said, voice strained. "This company cannot run without its leader. And right now, you're lost. Lost." The words sliced through him. Liam didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He didn't have the strength, because every second spent in that boardroom felt like a second stolen from Zara. But then, Harold said the one thing that snapped Liam's head up, eyes flaring. "You cannot allow personal relationships with unstable backgrounds to compromise this company." A quiet, dangerous silence fell. "Don't," Liam whispered, his voice sharp with warning. But Harold continued, unaware or uncaring that he was stepping onto sacred ground. Someone like Zara Monroe will only weaken you. People like her. Liam slammed his palms on the table. Several executives flinched. Don't you ever use her name like that. A murmur rippled through the room. Harold's jaw tightened. We're trying to save you from yourself. And from her influence. Now Liam understood. The pressure, the timing, the sudden suspension, the carefully chosen wording of every accusation. They were using Zara. Not directly, not explicitly. But she was the leverage, the crack they wanted to wedge open, the threat they whispered just quietly enough to make him choose between his heart and the empire he had been groomed to inherit. He left before they could say another word. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. His silence was a storm. While Liam fought a war on one front, Zara was being torn apart on another. It began with an anonymous email sent to various local news outlets. An email dripping with false righteousness. A woman with a troubled past is influencing the children of Havenbrook. Attached were distorted snippets of her childhood files, old, incomplete, manipulated to paint her as unstable, as dangerous, as someone who had been expelled from multiple shelters for causing trouble. Lies, twisted shadows of truth. But in the hands of a hungry media, lies were embers, and embers could ignite a wildfire. Within hours, headlines appeared. Community art director linked to problematic past. Who is the woman behind Sunrise? Art house. Ex-foster girl. With disciplinary issues. Teaching children. Zara read every word. Her hands went numb. Her lungs locked. Her knees nearly gave out. She barely recognized the girl they were describing. But the world didn't care about accuracy. It cared about spectacle. She tried to call Liam at first, but his phone went to voicemail. She texted. No response. She waited. Nothing. In the silence, her insecurities spiraled into certainty. He saw the articles. He learned what I came from. He understands now that I don't belong beside him. The ache that had followed her since childhood settled heavily in her chest, suffocating. She whispered into her dim apartment. He knows. And he chose not to say anything. The thought fractured her. Her whole life she'd been told she was trouble, a burden unworthy of love that stayed. She had believed she had escaped that fate. But wounds reopened easily. And when they did, they bled like they never healed. That night, Zara packed a small bag. Only the essentials. Only what she could carry. Because she was leaving. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion. Deep, bone-deep exhaustion. She needed to disappear before the world swallowed her whole. There was only one place she could think of that wasn't tainted by noise or expectation. Hope Bridge. The orphanage where she learned to endure. The place that taught her how to survive loneliness. It wasn't home. But it was familiar. Safe in its own broken way. By the time Liam returned to Havenbrook, rain pouring unsteadily, he was hanging on by the last strands of hope. Sunrise Art House was dark. The door was unlocked. He stepped inside and felt something in the air, an emptiness that was not physical but soul level. The room felt abandoned, hollow, as if the colors had been drained from the walls. He rushed to her office. Empty. No brushes, no sketchbooks, no coat on the hanger, no mug she used every morning. Just a single envelope resting on the desk. His heart lurched. He grabbed it, ripping it open with shaking hands. Her handwriting familiar, small, careful, spread across the page. Liam, I'm sorry. I'm tired. I need time to breathe, to disappear from the noise. Please don't look for me. The ink blurred as raindrops from his soaked sleeves splattered the paper. He could barely read the rest. I thought I could be part of your world, but I was wrong. My past is already hurting you. I can't let that happen again." Liam staggered back. Breath punched from his lungs. "No," he whispered. "Zara, no." He ran out into the storm, shouting her name into the night. Through the streets, through the alleys, past the bus station, the train depot, the empty playgrounds. His voice cracked. His legs gave out. He kept going. He didn't care who saw, didn't care about the soaked clothes or the mud soaking his knees when he fell. Zara. The rain swallowed the sound. When he finally sank to the ground, exhausted, soaked, shattered, he realized something devastating. They were both hurting, both confused, both drowning in lies and silence, and both believed the other had abandoned them. Zara reached Hope Bridge just before dawn. The building hadn't changed much. Same faded walls, same cracked courtyard tiles, same wind chimes near the entrance, soft and lonely. She stepped inside with her small bag and let the quiet settle around her. For the first time in days, she breathed without shaking. She was safe here, hidden, forgotten maybe, but safe. She curled onto an old couch, hugging her knees. The rain drummed softly on the windows. Her whisper barely stirred the air. Maybe he never needed me after all. Outside, the storm pressed on. Inside, Zara let the darkness wrap around her, not to smother her, but to protect her from a world too sharp, too cruel. She didn't know Liam was on his knees, miles away, soaked and shaking, whispering her name like a prayer. He refused to surrender. She didn't know he had nearly lost his position, his reputation, and his sanity trying to find her. She didn't know he would burn the world down before giving up. And Liam, drenched beneath a street lamp, didn't know that she still loved him, that she had run away, not to escape him, but to save him. Fate had torn them apart again, but fate was not finished, not even close. Dawn crept over the Sterling estate like a hesitant confession. The storm had passed hours ago, but its aftermath lingered, branches scattered across the driveway, puddles, reflecting fractured pieces of sky, and a heaviness in the air that felt almost sentient. Inside the mansion, Harold and Margaret Sterling sat in the study, tension thick between them. Margaret's fingers trembled as she set down a stack of printed emails. Harold paced by the window, his expression dark. "We know who did it," Margaret said, finally, voice tight. "Every smear article, every leaked file, every anonymous tip sent to the press. It's all connected." Harold stopped pacing. "The board. Not all of them, but a faction," she replied. "The ones who feared Liam stepping down. They believed Zara would turn him away from the company, that she was a threat." Harold closed his eyes. Sadness aged him. "So they destroyed her reputation. They weaponized her childhood," Margaret whispered, fury trembling in her tone. "They fed the media half-truths and fabricated accusations. They painted her as unstable, dangerous, unworthy." A beat of silence, and Liam Harold asked quietly. Margaret's voice broke. "He thinks he failed her." Liam stood in the doorway, having heard every word. His hair was rain-tousled clothes, still damp from the night before. There was a rawness to him, a fracture behind his eyes that hadn't been there before Zara disappeared. Margaret rushed forward. "We were just coming to—" "Is it true?" Liam asked, his voice low, shaking. "Everything you said?" Harold hesitated. Liam's breath faltered. "Tell me the truth." Harold's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Yes." The rage that surged through Liam was quiet, not explosive. It simmered cold and sharp like a blade forged by grief instead of fire. "They hurt her," he whispered, "and because of it she ran. Margaret reached for him, but he stepped back. Liam, please don't do anything reckless. Reckless? His laugh was hollow. I've already lost her once. I won't lose her again. Harold tried to steady him. You can't walk away from the company like this. We need time to… I don't care about the company. Liam's voice cracked on the final word. What use is an empire if the only person who makes it matter isn't there to share it with me? Harold opened his mouth, but no argument came. Liam had already made up his mind. He grabbed his keys, turned toward the door, and said only one thing before leaving. I'm going to get her back. The road to Hope Bridge blurred beneath Liam's tires. The sky above was wild and streaked with gold, as if the world itself was urging him forward. His hands shook on the wheel, not from fear, but from the overwhelming force of what he felt. He thought of Zara, sitting alone somewhere she once called a last resort. He thought of her crying in the dark, believing he'd chosen the world that tried to destroy her. He thought of all the years they spent searching for each other, only to be pulled apart by lies. And the fear, God, the fear of reaching her too late, clawed at his ribs. I'm coming, he whispered into the empty car. Just hold on. Hope Bridge hadn't changed. The rusted swings, the cracked fountain, the old brick building that smelled like rain-soaked memories. Liam skidded to a stop, rushed up the steps, and swung open the front doors. Children's laughter drifted from the old playroom, a sound so heartbreakingly familiar, it twisted something deep in his chest. And there, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside a cluster of kids painting paper lanterns, was Zara. Her hair was tied loosely, strands falling over her cheek. She was wearing a patched sweater, the same kind she used to wear when she wanted to feel small, safe, invisible. But her cheeks were damp, her smile strained, her posture folded inward as if bracing against the world. She didn't see him at first, but a little girl tugged her sleeve and pointed toward the doorway. Zara turned, and the moment her eyes met Liam's, something inside her broke open. Her brush clattered to the floor. Her breath hitched like a gasp, strangled by disbelief. Her lips parted in shock, and tears spilled instantly, uncontrollably, as if she had been holding them back for far too long. Liam didn't wait. He stepped into the room slowly, gently, like approaching a sacred, fragile thing. His chest rose and fell with trembling breaths. He looked at her, as if she were the only person in the universe. Zara shook her head in disbelief, one hand covering her trembling mouth. This has to be a dream, she thought, because she had prayed for him and hated herself for hoping. But he was here, real, solid, breathless. Zara. Her knees weakened. He moved first, crossing the last few steps, stopping only when he was close enough to touch her. She stared up at him through a blur of tears, lips quivering. Why are you… Her voice cracked painfully. You're supposed to be your world, you weren't. Liam exhaled, raw with emotion. I'm here, he said, voice low and rough. For you. And those 3 words shattered her. All the hurt, all the fear, all the nights she spent thinking he'd chosen someone else. She collapsed forward, sobbing not out of weakness, but relief so deep it tore her open. Liam caught her arms, wrapping around her, as if anchoring his entire heart to her trembling frame. He pulled her closer, holding her with a desperation that stole the breath from both of them. She clung to him, the fabric of his coat balled in her fists. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. But safety wasn't the whole story. Heartbreak poured out between them, messy, raw, fragile. Why didn't you call? She whispered into his chest. Why didn't you tell me you still wanted me? Liam closed his eyes, not in shame, but in pain. They silenced me, he said, twisted everything, tried to pull me away from you. Zara stiffened. They, who the board? His jaw tightened. They orchestrated the articles, the rumors, the emails. They used your childhood as a weapon to keep us apart. Zara stepped back, shaking her head. No, that can't. Why would they? Because they thought you'd make me walk away from the empire, he said softly. And they were right. She stared at him, stunned. Liam, I don't care about Future Tech, or Aurelia, or the board, or the empire they want to build. His breath shuddered. I care about you, and I won't lose you again. Her vision blurred again, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. He lifted a hand to her face, wiping them gently. You are not a burden, he whispered. You are not the girl those articles described. You're the bravest person I know. And I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. Zara covered her mouth, a sob escaping. I thought you chose them, she whispered. I thought you finally realized I didn't belong in your world. Liam's gaze burned with emotion. My world is wherever you are. Her knees buckled. He caught her again. A long, trembling silence followed children, watching quietly from their corner, the old orphanage holding its breath around them. And in that silence, something shifted. The walls that fear built, the insecurities that nearly destroyed them, the lies that tried to tear them apart, all began to crumble. Zara placed her hand on his chest over his heartbeat. I was so scared, she whispered. I didn't want to hold you back. You're the only thing that's ever pushed me forward, Liam murmured. Her tears broke again, and their foreheads touched softly, tremblingly, as if sealing a vow older than the years they had lost. When they finally stepped back, air thick with emotion, Zara whispered, What? Now? Liam took her hands gently, reverently. Now, he said, we stop letting the world interfere. A breath, a promise, a beginning. Zara nodded through tears. Then don't run from me again. I won't, he said. But if I ever lose my way, you come find me. A soft, trembling laugh escaped her. And in the playroom, where they had once been lonely children, two hearts battered by fear finally found each other again. Not by destiny, not by chance, but by choice. Their choice. And nothing, not boardrooms, not rumors, not the ghosts of their past would come between them again. 12 months had passed since the day Liam found Zara again in the old playroom of Hope Bridge. 12 months of rebuilding, healing, choosing each other every day with the quiet determination of two people who had been given a second chance at life. The world around them changed too slowly, but unmistakably. Sterling Global emerged from chaos, like a city after a long storm. Its halls no longer echoed with fear or manipulation, but with new leadership and renewed integrity. Liam led the company not as a man defending an empire, but as someone who carried compassion in one hand and conviction in the other. He made decisions transparently. He cut ties cleanly with those who had used Zara as leverage. The board members behind the smear campaign were removed quietly, legally, permanently. Justice, he believed, was best served in silence, not spectacle. Ava Moretti, once tangled in rumors neither she nor Liam wanted, became one of his closest allies. Brilliant and tactically sharp, she helped him restructure departments and rebuild trust from the ground up. Their partnership was built on clarity this time, shaped by mutual respect and a promise to never let shadows dictate truth again. Meanwhile, Zara's world blossomed in a different direction. Sunrise Art House expanded into something Havenbrook had never seen before, a sanctuary of color and curiosity. Its once small rooms now held studios for music, digital art, robotics, pottery, dance, and reading corners lit by soft lamps. Children ran through the hallways with paint on their cheeks and laughter on their tongues. If one listened closely enough, the building almost hummed with the electricity of young dreams. And through it all, Zara moved with a quiet grace, guiding listening teaching, with a gentleness carved from her own scars. The children adored her. They called her Miss Zara of the Heart, a name that always made her laugh through a blush. Some evenings Liam would visit after work, leaning in the doorway of a classroom, as he watched her kneel beside a child struggling with a drawing or a robot that wouldn't move. In those moments, he fell for her all over again. Because she wasn't healing just herself. She was healing others. On a golden afternoon, the world seemed to pause for them. They were on the front porch of their small Havenbrook home, an old cottage they restored together, framed by climbing roses and strings of warm lights. The air smelled of earth and summer. Sunlight filtered through vines, dappling Zara's hair in a glow that made Liam forget to breathe. She was watering the flowers when she noticed him watching her from the doorway, an unreadable softness in his eyes. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, amused. He stepped onto the porch without a word. Then he knelt. Her breath caught the watering can slipping slightly in her hand. Liam reached into his pocket, revealing a small, elegant ring, delicate but crafted with intention, like something chosen for a lifetime, not a moment. His voice was calm yet trembling at the edges. "Zara Monroe," he said, emotion tightening his throat. "You're where my heart rests. You always have been. Will you marry me?" The ring sparkled faintly in his hand, but the emotion in his voice outshone everything. Zara's eyes brimmed instantly. She covered her mouth with both hands, shoulders shaking with quiet, overwhelmed laughter. "I waited 15 years to stand beside you," she whispered through tears. "I'm not running anymore." He slipped the ring onto her finger. She leaned down, still crying, and pressed her forehead to his. In that moment, time felt like an old circle finally closing. They weren't orphans reaching for something impossible anymore. They were two people choosing the same future. Their wedding took place in the garden behind Sunrise Art House. No lavish decor, no glittering chandelier, no towering cake or gold-lined invitations. Just sunlight, flowers, soft music, and the presence of the children from Hope Bridge, the little souls who reminded Liam and Zara of who they were before the world took too much from them. Liam wore a simple suit. Zara wore a flowing white dress with sleeves embroidered by the children themselves, each stitch uneven, each thread mismatched, each piece perfect in its own beautiful way. When she walked down the aisle, Liam had to close his eyes for a moment just to steady himself. She looked like love itself, soft, courageous, glowing. Harold Sterling officiated the ceremony with a voice thick with emotion. Margaret cried openly. Ava Moretti smiled wider than anyone expected. The vows were quiet, spoken only loud enough for the other to hear. They didn't whisper promises of eternity. They whispered promises of everyday choices, of showing up when it mattered, of fighting and healing and coming home. When Liam kissed her, the world didn't explode into fireworks. It softened, like the moment right before dawn. 3 months after the wedding, Zara stood in their small bathroom, staring at a little white stick with 2 faint lines. Her heart thudded so loudly, she thought Liam might hear it from the hallway. She hid it behind her back as she walked out. But Liam saw the way her hands trembled. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. She hesitated only a second before lifting the test. Liam froze, blinking once, twice. Then the meaning sank in with a force that nearly brought him to his knees. His arms wrapped around her, instantaneously pulling her close, burying his face in her shoulder, whispering breathless, shaking words she couldn't fully make out. She laughed and swatted at him. Liam breathed. "You're squeezing me." He only held her tighter. tears falling freely. For the first time in his life, the word family felt real. Not something he longed for, not something he feared losing, but something he was building. With her, months passed. Their home filled with baby clothes, name lists, nursery paint samples, and gentle anticipation. Liam attended every doctor appointment, never missing a heartbeat on the monitor, never missing a moment to kiss Zara's forehead as she lay on the table. And then, on a quiet evening, illuminated by warm hospital lights, Zara brought 2 lives into the world, a son and a daughter. She held them both, exhausted but radiant, tears streaking down her cheeks. "They're perfect," she whispered. Liam stood beside her, unable to speak. His hands shook as the nurse placed both infants into his arms, tiny, warm, weightless miracles. He stared at them with a reverence that broke him open. The boy had soft brown hair. The girl had a faint swirl of dark curls. Both blinked up at him with bright, curious eyes, eyes that shone like his. For a moment, Liam couldn't breathe. Family. His family. His voice cracked. I never thought I'd have this." Zara reached up and cupped his cheek, her thumb brushing away his tears. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. "You have us. All of us." He bent down and pressed his forehead against hers, the twins cradled safely between them. In that sunlit hospital room, surrounded by the faint beeping of monitors and the soft breaths of 2 new souls, the past finally loosened its grip on them. They had lived through sorrow, misunderstanding, and years of longing. They had run toward and away from each other more times than their hearts could bear. But they were here now, together, complete. Their daughter stirred and let out a tiny, curious sound. Their son curled his tiny fingers around Liam's thumb, and the 4 of them, father, mother, son, daughter, fit together, as if they had always been meant to. At the end of 15 years carved by pain and hope, the path that began in an old orphanage had led them home. To each other. To a family of their own. To a love that survived every storm. A love that was never lost, only waiting. Forever.